You've been hearing projects about sustainability issues at the international city level. We're going to turn now to a project that focuses on the individual and what people can do to improve environmental performance. This project was advised by Suzanne DeRoche, and Jason Prince will make the presentation. Jason.
Good evening. My name is Jason Prince, and I'm here tonight to present, on behalf of my capstone team and our faculty advisor, Suzanne DeRoche, our program for improving sustainability through behavior change at the Natural Resources Defense Council. To begin, I will introduce our client, our research approach, and our findings, and I'll then move on to discuss our project scope and implementation timeline. Finally, I'll conclude with a summary highlighting the key takeaways. As a starting point, I'd like to first describe why behavior change is even important. And the rationale for this is, as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change states with 95% certainty that human behavior is indeed responsible for climate change and fundamentally at the root of all environmental problems. So our client, the Natural Resources Defense Council, hereafter referred to as NRDC, as a leading environmental action and advocacy organization, already intimately understands this relationship between human behavior on the one hand and sustainability on the other. And that's why they came to us, because although they've already made great strides in greening their physical infrastructure, for example, undergoing the US Green Building Council's LEED certification for 6 out of their 7 offices internationally, they nonetheless realize that to further drive emissions reductions, they need to engage their employees to actually change their behaviors to make them more environmentally responsible. And in this way, we were tasked with devising a comprehensive implementation plan to engage all NRDC employees in changing their behaviors to reduce their impacts associated with travel, consumption of energy, and their production of wastes. We took a multi-pronged approach to the problem, and carried out a literature review of behavioral psychology. Also, we combed through case studies to identify relevant best practices. And at the same time, we also conducted our own surveys and interviews of NRDC to better understand the physical characteristics and the culture across all their offices. Some of our most relevant findings were that effective and consistent communication regarding the program goals, regarding the rationale behind the program, and regarding the progress of performance as the program is rolled out, in addition to the use of internal role models and peer influence, were all critical components for any successful behavior change program. As for NRDC, we found that their employees were collaborative by nature, for example, that they enjoyed group activities, that they were motivated by non-monetary rewards, and that there was indeed room for improvement in relation to making their behaviors more environmentally responsible. Finally, we also found, thanks to data collection efforts to date, where we were starting from. Knowing, for example, NRDC's current annual footprint is over 2,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions, almost 1 million kilowatt hours of electricity, and over 20,000 pounds of waste going to landfill every year. So, taking all that we had learned and synthesizing these findings together so that we could develop a very appropriate behavior change plan tailored to NRDC, we are recommending the following 3 initiatives: a travel emissions budget, the institutionalization of role models, and the establishment of internal competitions. The first of these initiatives that I'd like to highlight is the emissions budget related to employee travel. Now, we actually believe that there is a significant opportunity for NRDC to reduce its impact in this area, especially considering that an incredible 82% of the overall organization's carbon emissions are attributable just to employee business travel. So to realize this reduction potential, we are recommending the implementation of a revised travel policy, which critically will include a travel emissions budget for each and every NRDC department. These budgets will be calculated by each department head, given their respective travel needs, and they'll then be administered by the finance department using emissions data tracked through existing NRDC travel software. With the budget in place, employees will essentially be required to change their behaviors to lower their emissions associated with their travel. And to help them do so, we are encouraging at the same time that they take advantage of a newly installed video conferencing system as a substitute for non-essential travel. And for when travel is absolutely necessary, we're encouraging them to use alternative transportation options which are lower carbon. For example, getting to where they have to go via rail transport instead of using air transport. Now, moving on to our recommended initiatives that are going to address energy and waste, we have the institutionalization of role models as a critical feature of our overall program. And as mentioned, our research has shown that having consistent role models really helps develop new behaviors. And indeed, we found that normative social influence has been proven to be more effective at actually changing behaviors than just the knowledge of the correct action itself. So for example, people are much more inclined to recycle if they see everyone around them recycling instead of just being told that they should recycle. So for these reasons, we are recommending that there be at least one formalized role model for energy and at least one for waste in every office. These role models, or as we like to call them, green champions, will volunteer to serve as sustainability leaders for their office for a 12-month period. And during this time, they will run targeted sustainability competitions, they will report to management performance, and they will lead their entire office in initiatives towards reducing their environmental impacts. As these green champions are leading change from the middle of the organization, since they are employees too, just like everyone else within the office, we really do believe that they'll be most effective at diffusing the desired practices throughout. And also, we feel that this type of role fits very well with NRDC, given their culture of volunteering and also their environmental expertise. Our third and final recommended initiative is a sustainable organization-wide competition. The Sustainable builds off previous NRDC success hosting internal competitions, and at the same time adds a fun and social element to the program overall, and is proven by change management studies to actually really help drive behavior. The Sustainable overall will consist of impact-specific competitions, which will each run for 3 months and be led by the green champions once they've already been established. These competitions will alternate focus area between energy and waste, and offices will compete with each other to actually reduce emissions relative to each other, and will receive a group-based activity reward, something like a bowling night, for example, for the office that achieves the greatest reductions. For those offices that have multiple floors, there will be at the same time micro competitions held with similar rewards offered for the winning floor. We do believe that these type of rewards fit very well with NRDC's collaborative staff culture, since we've already heard from our interviews that they really do enjoy spending time together. And we also believe that reinforcement theory, which has stated that people change behaviors more rapidly if they're told which behaviors are going to be rewarded, really does support the competitive element. The last point regarding communication really drives home the importance of being able to provide information continually to employees so that they understand the results of their actions. And this is why every competition will rely heavily on the use of dashboards, which will look something like this, and will help provide a feedback loop so that employees really understand what impacts their behavior changes have in real time. So these dashboards will actually be located in prominent locations across all offices and allow employees to see how they're doing relative to each other and how they're doing relative to themselves over time. Finally, to maintain momentum and ensure employee engagement in the Sustainable over time, we recommend having kickoff events every 3 months. So anytime you have a new competition, there will be a kickoff event to introduce the new round. For example, to kick off an energy competition, we are recommending an event called an off-the-grid hour, where employees will all, at one designated hour, turn off all electronic devices and attend a lunch and learn session where an expert on energy will discuss opportunities for energy conservation at home and at the office. Similarly, for the kickoff event for a waste competition, we recommend having a dumpster day where employees will all get together and sort through the collected garbage in the course of a day, which is a very highly interactive and visceral experience to help engage them in understanding exactly the volumes and the types of waste that they're generating in hopes that we can actually highlight opportunities for diversion. So bringing all of these initiatives together, we are proposing the following timeline for the program rollout. We see Green Champions starting from day one so that they can really help drive engagement amongst other staff and help lead the initiatives. We see the first kickoff event for the energy competition of the Sustainable taking place just in the second quarter of the first year. And again, as mentioned, the energy competition will last for 3 months, followed by waste, and this will continue as demonstrated by the timeline. Finally, the travel emissions budget will get going in the second half of the first year, and all employees will be held to a standard once the budget has been defined. So to ensure the success of this entire behavior change program, we'll be providing NRDC with a comprehensive implementation plan, which will include training materials for all relevant staff. For example, as noted, the Green Champions will have a very special training program provided for them. We'll also be providing benchmarks based on all of the case studies that we had and best practices. And finally, there will be a solid communications plan detailing exactly how each step of the process will roll out and to maintain a consistent message throughout the entire program. So in summary, we really do believe that with the implementation of all of our recommended initiatives, NRDC has an enormous potential to reduce their impacts. The following targets have been developed using NRDC data as baselines and again case studies for best practice targets. And with the math, we decided to set for the first year targets of 9% reductions from travel, 12% from energy, and 38% from waste. We see these as very readily achievable, and especially considering NRDC already has the knowledge, the willpower, and the culture. We think that the employees, if given the tools and incentives to really reduce their emissions, we think they can absolutely do a fantastic job. With that, thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
How did you arrive at the first year goals, those numbers, the target?
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. It's a really important topic for any program rollout. And as I mentioned, what we really tried to do was combine the research that we had done NRDC specific, so understanding what their baselines were, for example, from data collection efforts to date, and then combine that with best practices that we found through other organizations who had implemented similar practices, and kind of bringing those two approaches together. We set those numbers, as I mentioned, for the first year, and with any program, it's never an exact science, but we did believe that these were very manageable and realistic expectations that we could set to be revised kind of once the program had rolled out and given that.
Go ahead. Were there any financial constraints placed on your group by NRDC in terms of paying for this or allocating money for that?
Absolutely, and thanks for the question. We were given a $50,000 budget for the overall implementation of all of the initiatives that we had. What our budget is for the first 2 years of the program rollout is between $20,000 to $40,000 is what we see. The variability in that range relates to, depending on which offices win the rewards, there's going to be greater rewards for that. It'll be greater costs, associated with those rewards. And similarly, depending on which software programs that we've recommended to NRDC that they choose, there will be different costs as well.
Time for one more. Go ahead there.
You said you took a look at some interviews and the culture of the organization and a lot of change management literature. Were you involved in looking at their employee engagement data at all in terms of understanding what might move realistically? Yeah,
absolutely. And thanks again for that. We spent a lot of time, in fact, dealing in the course of our interviews with better understanding the internal communications. As mentioned, I think a number of times through the presentation, we found such emphasis placed on communication from all of our behavioral change and change management literature that when we tried to develop an appropriate plan for NRDC, better understanding exactly what processes they already had in place and how they were communicating, for example, new programs in their own right was something that we really tried to dig into. And with that, we tried to take, for example, the fact that they have email newsletter communications on a monthly basis and then They have weekly meetings for top management and kind of seeing exactly how their organizational processes work and trying to work with those to include our implementation.
Okay, nice job. Thank you.